The VIP Crew with Vivek, Wallace, and Big P. Percy Crawford.
The VIP Crew.
How do you think Keith Thurman handles the work rate of a younger guy who can sustain that for 12 rounds?
You know, when you're looking at an anomaly like Fundora, who's 6'6", competing at junior middleweight, you have to look for the gaps, the holes in this game. Although I think Keith Thurman would have benefited more from fighting him probably 2 years prior, because if you look at some of Fundora's more recent fights, he is starting to figure some shit out in terms of using his distance, his range. He has a sneaky uppercut that he throws on the inside. So I think Thurman one time would have benefited from fighting him a couple years prior. But I still see gaps. I still see where he fights with his head straight up in the air. He's kind of allergic to tucking his chin. When he comes in to finish, when he thinks he has you hurt, there's some gaps there to fire off some combinations, which is what Zoo did in the rematch successfully. I thought there was time Zoo was on his way out, and next thing you know, Fundora was reeling a little bit. So I think one time's going to have to take advantages of some of that aggressiveness and some of that output, because with the way he keeps his head center line and doesn't have a whole bunch of head movement, when he's throwing all those shots, he does leave some opportunities. And I think one time's going to have to take advantage of those opportunities and not be in so much retreat mode, which we've seen a little bit out of one time in some of his more recent fights.
I always like to look at the subplots. And, you know, one of the things you and I have talked about offline was the relative inactivity for Keith Thurman. And as I was going through some of those details, and I was looking at the fact that from 2017 to current, Keith Thurman has had 6 fights. This is going to blow you away. Fundora has had 25 in the same amount of time. Now, keep in mind, his premiere, his initial fight, pro debut was in 2016. So, of course, they were trying to develop him, give him some rounds, whatever. But 25 fights to 6 over that time frame. How do you think that plays out in a fight like this with a guy like Thurman?
Man, that obviously that's one of the concerning things if you're a Thurman supporter, and not so much because, like you said, Fundora was young, so they was moving him faster. When he was fighting probably 6-7 times a year, Keith was in with high-level guys. So I don't think it'll play that much of a role in terms of the opposition Keith was facing when Fundora was very active like that. The things that scare me is if you look at the Barrios and Pacquiao fight, there was 2-3 year gaps in Keith Thurman's career after those fights. Now, if you look recent, he fought a few months before Fundora in 25 when he went to Australia. Fundora was fighting Zoo. But those 2-3 year gaps is something you just don't get back. And I know some people are pointing at preservation, meaning he wasn't taking damage during those years. I personally don't think boxing works like that. I don't think boxing is like, oh, I'm going to sit on the shelf for 3 years to preserve myself. Boxing is a sharpen the tools, stay sharp, stay ready so you don't have to get ready type of sport. And I don't know what kind of work one time was doing in the gym during those layoffs, so I won't pretend. But I know during one of them layoffs, he had elbow surgery, I believe, after the Pacquiao fight. I think another time he had a hand issue. So it's not even like he could go hard during some of those layoffs. And that's concerning for me, being that it's ironic because Fundora had a hand injury, which is the reason it got canceled the first time. But much younger guy, he can bounce back from injuries better. Those 2-3 year gaps is concerning, man. Goodness gracious. I don't think one time's fought multiple fights in a calendar year since like 2015, 2016, maybe. That's scary.
It's been a minute. So if there's someone that can exploit some of those loopholes, like you mentioned, it's definitely Keith Thurman. Do you think, just to put it in question for him, do you think his experience, you think about it, he's been in the ring with Barrios, Swift Garcia, Sean Porter, Robert Guerrero, a lot of these guys, that type of experience, even with the timeout, do you think it gives him the edge that it would, despite the time off?
I don't know if it gives him an edge, but much like you just alluded to, if anybody can do it, given all those things you just said, it's one-time Thurman. I actually think Keith Thurman's probably the most athletic guy that Fundora has seen, and probably has better movement than anybody that
100%.
Fundora has seen. Erickson Lupin is a guy that likes to show off his heart a little bit. That got him in trouble. Tim Tszyu kind of only fights one way. That got him in trouble. Brian Mendoza, who was losing the fight by all means before he knocked Fundora out. Fundora was kicking his ass, but he's kind of a 1-2 guy as well. Keith Thurman can use movement. He does throw flurries and while moving in and out. At 37, 38 years old, I don't know how crisp that's going to be. I don't know how long he can sustain it, but he definitely has the pedigree, the skill set, the athleticism, and the resume to deal with Fundora. But much like we say styles make fights in boxing, we also say Father Time is undefeated. And that's what we'll see Saturday night. How old is 37 for Keith Thurman?
But let's jump into keys to victory. Give me your thoughts for both guys. Like, how do you see both of them needing to attack this to come out successful on Saturday night?
I think for Keith Thurman to win, he has to move only when necessary. Don't do a lot of unnecessary movement, because I think with the activity of Fundora's hands, the way he throws a lot of punches, the movement optically can look bad. It can look kind of like running. I hate to use the word running, but kind of like that. So move when necessary. Punch while Fundora's punching and within him punching, because, again, his head is straight up in the air, so there'll be some opportunities there. For Fundora, I think it's just be Fundora, with the exception of I would like to see him use his range. And for once, I'd like to see Fundora make a fight easy on himself. I think sometimes he's in dog fights that aren't necessary. When you have that kind of height and reach, fighting at 154 pounds, every fight doesn't have to be a barn burner. I understand he loves that. He likes to please the fans. This may be one of those ones you want to just make easy on yourself, because they say power's the last thing to go. And I know one time hasn't knocked someone out, before the fight in Australia in quite some time. So I guess high level guy, but he can crack a little bit. So if you can make this one easy on yourself, this will be the one.
Yeah, I definitely like that feedback. I would kind of piggyback off of that. When I think about the fight for Fundora, I think Fundora, like you said, it's actually a lot of things I think he can capitalize on. The work rate is kind of his strength anyway. You're coming in there against an older guy. I would try to stay as active as possible, while also being cautious of the fact that this is a guy who can pop and actually hurt him. Biggest puncher he's faced, you could argue. So I think Fundora needs to keep the fight very active. Just keep Thurman outside. And I think, like you said, he needs to make it an easier fight. He certainly can with his size dimension, possibly. Flip side to that, for Keith Thurman, I think, it's going to be – I think Keith's best shot is really to make it a very close fight and stay off the edge of that reach. If he stands that distance all night, I think he gets picked apart, and it won't be very hard for Fundora to win on points, I think, based on his work rate, his reach, etc. So Keith is going to have to smother him a little bit, stay in his chest. Don't give him that long range, and try and keep the fight close and land something wicked, maybe even to the body. But I think Keith's biggest key to victory is going to be keeping it close and not allowing Fundora to just tee off and hit him at distance. How do you see it ending?
Man, I would love to see. Maybe it's my age speaking, but I'd love to see the old guy turn back the clock. It's going to be tough, man. I think kind of like I said, one time is probably the best mover that Fundora's fought. Fundora hasn't really shown the ability or necessity to cut off the ring. Unfortunately, I think that's going to bite Keith in the ass. I think his movement is probably going to be over movement, and Keith Thurman doesn't have a fluid movement. He has like a frenetic, let me get the hell out of here movement. And I think on the judges' scorecards, that will reflect a little bad. I don't see Fundora stopping him, but I can see Fundora pulling away from him late, strictly because he's probably going to use a lot of unnecessary movement. And I think his 37-year-old legs will kind of fail him towards the later half of the fight. Maybe 9th or 10th round, we'll see Fundora start taking over. So we'd love to see Keith Thurman rewind the clock and get a win. I think he's coming back against something different, man. Fundora is an anomaly, and he knows how to fight, and he's getting better.
I couldn't agree more. I think the smart money is on Fundora. I just think the work rate, the reach, the youth, I think he has too many key attributes on his side, too many things to overcome. But, I mean, if if there is a guy that can figure out that puzzle, it is Keith Thurman. You know, it's unfortunate we haven't really seen, with all those layoffs and all, we haven't really seen from Keith Thurman what I thought we would in his early day. And, you know, I guess this fight here would help him cement his legacy if he's able to get it done. But, you know, I think that you have to go with the smart money on Fundora just based on youth, etc.
The VIP crew with Vivek Wallace and Big P Percy Crawford.
The VIP crew.